What if the most famous landmark in China holds secrets so deep, so startling, that they rewrite history itself? Stretching over 13,000 miles across mountains and deserts, the Great Wall is more than just a monument. It's a riddle wrapped in stone, a puzzle built by emperors and laborers, hiding truths far darker and more extraordinary than you've ever been told. Picture this, a structure so massive it can be seen from space, yet so misunderstood, its real purpose has been buried for centuries. This isn't just a wall. It's a silent witness to empires rising and falling, to battles fought in shadow, and to mysteries that still haunt its ancient stones. Think you know the Great Wall? Think again. Behind its towering ramparts lie stories of forbidden knowledge, hidden tunnels, and whispers of lost treasures, secrets so explosive they've been carefully erased from the history books. Who really built this colossal fortress? Was it truly meant to keep invaders out or to keep something else in? And why do so many who have walked its length vanish without a trace? The answers aren't just surprising, they're spine-chilling. This is a journey into the unknown, where every brick holds a clue and every twist in the wall reveals another layer of deception. From ghostly apparitions seen by night watchmen to the eerie symbols carved where no one was meant to find them, the Great Wall is a living enigma. And today, we're pulling back the curtain on its 30 most shocking hidden truths, facts so bizarre, so unsettling, they'll make you question everything you thought you knew. Buckle up, history is about to get a lot more interesting. One of the most persistent myths about the Great Wall is the claim that it's the only man-made structure visible from space with the naked eye. Generations have grown up believing this, but the truth, it's pure fiction. Even from low Earth orbit, the wall blends into the landscape, just like any other ancient structure. So how did this idea take hold? The myth traces back centuries, long before spaceflight. European travelers in the 1700s marveled at the wall's sheer scale, speculating that such a colossal feat of engineering must be visible from the heavens. Their exaggerated tales spread, cementing the idea in popular imagination. By the time astronauts finally reached space, reality clashed with legend. Not a single one, not Neil Armstrong, not Yong Luwei, not even Chris Hadfield, has reported seeing the wall unaided. Satellite images tell the same story. The wall's materials match the surrounding terrain, making it nearly impossible to distinguish from high altitude without zoom lenses, yet the myth refuses to die. Why? Because it feeds into our awe for the wall's grandeur. Admitting it's invisible from space feels like diminishing its majesty, but the truth is even more fascinating. The wall's real marvel isn't some arbitrary view from orbit. It's the fact that humans built something so vast, so enduring without modern tools, spanning deserts and mountains with nothing but brute labor and ingenuity. That's the real wonder, not a debunked myth, but the undeniable proof of what people can achieve. Behind the Great Wall's awe-inspiring facade lies one of history's most chilling whispers, the claim that human bones were mixed into its mortar. This macabre legend suggests that the wall wasn't just built by laborers, but from them, their remains ground into the very fabric of its stones. While it's easy to dismiss this as folklore, the truth behind the myth is even darker than most realize. Historical records from the Ming Dynasty recount staggering casualties among workers, thousands succumbing to exhaustion, starvation, or brutal punishment. Ancient texts describe bodies buried in unmarked trenches near construction sites, some so close to the wall that erosion later exposed skeletal fragments. In some sections, archaeologists have found bone shards embedded in the mortar, though these likely came from nearby graves disturbed during building. Yet the most haunting detail, the wall's mortar did contain a secret ingredient, sticky rice flour, mixed with lime to create a glue stronger than anything else at the time. When early observers saw white fragments in the mortar, they assumed the worst. The reality, a testament to engineering ingenuity, twisted into a ghost story by time. But here's what's rarely acknowledged. Whether or not bones were deliberately added, the wall is a tomb. Entire regiments of workers, convicts, peasants, prisoners of war vanished into its construction, their names erased by centuries. Modern surveys reveal mass graves along its route, some holding hundreds piled together. The real horror isn't in the mortar, it's in the silence. The wall didn't just keep invaders out, it sealed suffering in, layer by layer, mile after mile. And if you listen closely to the wind howling through its watchtowers, some say you can still hear the echoes of those who never left. The Great Wall, as we know it today, is actually a patchwork of fragments. Nearly a third of its original length has vanished into the earth, erased by time, human hands, and even deliberate destruction. How does something so massive, so carefully constructed, simply disappear? The answer lies in a mix of slow decay and shocking acts of disregard that span centuries. Nature has been the wall's quietest but most relentless foe. In the arid north, sandstorms have scoured entire sections down to their foundations, while in humid regions, torrential rains have turned ramparts to mudslides. Earthquakes like the one that struck Shaanxi in 1556 toppled watchtowers like dominoes, leaving gaps that were never repaired. But nature isn't the only culprit. For generations, locals living near the wall treated it as a quarry, prizing its tightly packed bricks for their own homes, barns, and roads. Why haul stone from distant mountains when the wall's perfectly cut blocks were right there? Entire villages along the Hebei corridor were built with bricks stamped with Ming Dynasty seals, ghosts of the wall repurposed. Even more astonishing, the Chinese government itself dismantled parts of the wall in the 1950s and 60s, declaring sections useless relics standing in the way of progress. In Inner Mongolia, bulldozers flattened miles of ramparts to make room for new railroads and factories. The irony is bitter. A structure that once symbolized strength was sacrificed for modernization. Yet the wall refuses to vanish completely. Archaeologists using satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar keep uncovering lost segments, some buried under farmland, others hidden in plain sight, disguised as rocky hills. In 2015, a team found a forgotten stretch in Liaoning province swallowed by dense forest, its stones still locked in place after 600 years. The wall's disappearance isn't just a story of loss, it's a reminder that history is always being rewritten, one crumbling brick at a time. Beneath the Great Wall's towering ramparts lies a labyrinth. Few have ever seen secret tunnels winding like veins through the earth, their original purpose shrouded in mystery. While the wall itself is an unmistakable symbol of defense, these hidden passages tell a far more complex story. Archaeologists have uncovered at least 16 confirmed tunnels, some stretching for miles, their entrances cleverly concealed behind false bricks or beneath crumbling watchtowers. But who built them and why? The most plausible theory points to military strategy. During sieges, these tunnels could have served as covert supply routes, allowing reinforcements or messages to slip past enemy lines undetected. One recently discovered passage near Jinshanling runs straight toward what was once Mongol territory, its walls scarred with tool marks suggesting frantic expansion during wartime. Other tunnels, like those near Jiayuguan, feature vertical shafts that may have doubled as emergency exits, places where guards could vanish into the earth if overrun. Yet not all these underground networks were built for war. Local legends speak of smugglers who carved their own routes through the wall's foundations, trafficking silk, spices, and even opium beneath the noses of imperial soldiers. In 2019, researchers found a tunnel in Hebei filled with 17th-century pottery shards, likely the remnants of a smuggler's cache abandoned in haste. But the most unsettling discoveries are the ones that defy explanation. In Ningxia, a tunnel abruptly ends at a smooth stone wall engraved with strange, looping symbols unrelated to any known dynasty's script. Near Datong, another passage branches into a circular chamber with no exit, its floor littered with animal bones and charred remnants of fires no official record mentions. Were these spaces used for rituals, hideouts, or something far older than the wall itself? The tunnels whisper of a shadow history, one where the wall wasn't just a barrier, but a living, breathing entity with secrets buried deep in its bones. Every new discovery peels back another layer, proving that even after centuries, the earth beneath this monument refuses to give up all its mysteries. The Great Wall we recognize today, massive stone ramparts stretching across mountain ridges, bears little resemblance to its earliest ancestors. Centuries before the Ming dynasty's iconic battlements, the wall was little more than a string of packed earth mounds, crumbling trenches, and wooden palisades. These humble beginnings trace back to the 7th century BC, when rival warlords scrambled to mark their territories with whatever materials lay at hand. Imagine not a towering fortress, but a haphazard line of dirt and gravel, barely taller than a man, stretching across the northern plains. The first true precursor emerged during the Qin dynasty in the 3rd century BC. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, desperate to unify scattered fortifications into a cohesive barrier, ordered laborers to stamp layers of rammed earth between wooden frames, a technique still visible in eroded fragments near Gansu province. These walls were more symbolic than strategic, easily breached by determined horsemen. Yet their psychological impact was profound. For nomadic tribes, even these modest berms signaled a boundary not to be crossed lightly. By the Han Dynasty, builders began mixing gravel and reeds into the earth for stability, creating slightly more durable barriers. But the real transformation came centuries later, under the Northern Kai and Sui dynasties, when bricks first appeared, not as elaborate facing stones, but as crude, sun-dried blocks reinforcing vulnerable passes. Only during the Ming era, when gunpowder made traditional rammed earth defenses obsolete, did the wall take on its stone-clad grandeur. Workers quarried millions of tons of granite, kiln-fired uniform bricks, and developed mortar so strong it outlasted dynasties. The irony, those early earthworks, often dismissed as primitive, held secrets modern engineers admire. Rammed earth, when properly compacted, becomes nearly as hard as concrete, a fact proven by sections still standing after 2,000 years of storms. Near Dunhuang, archaeologists found Han-era layers mixed with tamarisk branches, a desert shrub whose roots secrete natural binding agents. These forgotten techniques whisper a truth more startling than legend. The wall's weakest versions were triumphs of ingenuity, laying the foundation for one of history's most astonishing engineering feats. History's cruelest irony about the Great Wall is that for all its staggering scale and sacrifice, it often failed at the very purpose it was built to serve. The Mongols didn't just breach the wall, they mocked it. In 1211, Genghis Khan's cavalry rode straight through a crumbling section in Inner Mongolia, barely slowing their advance. By 1234, his descendants had reduced entire fortresses to rubble, using captured Chinese engineers to build siege engines from the wall's own stones. This wasn't an isolated failure. Centuries later, the Manchus strolled through undefended passes in 1644, toppling the Ming dynasty with barely a fight. How could something so colossal fall so easily? The answer lies in a fatal miscalculation. The wall was never a single, unbroken barrier. It was a network of segments built by rival dynasties over centuries, full of gaps and weak points. Nomads didn't need to scale 30-foot ramparts when they could simply ride around them. During the Tang dynasty, entire sections were abandoned for decades, leaving corridors wide enough for armies to pass unchallenged. Even at its peak under the Ming, less than half the wall was actively garrisoned. Soldiers stationed in remote watchtowers often deserted, leaving gates unbarred. But the most damning evidence comes from the wall's own architects. Ming military logs reveal constant panic about undermanned garrisons and rotting supplies. In 1550, a commander wrote that his section's mortar had crumbled so badly, a child could kick through it. Yet the empire kept building, adding more miles instead of reinforcing weak ones. The wall became a propaganda tool, a symbol of imperial power that looked imposing on maps but faltered in reality. Perhaps the greatest testament to its failure lies in the bones beneath it. Battlefields just south of the wall are littered with mass grave soldiers who died defending a barrier that couldn't hold. Modern archaeologists find Mongol arrowheads embedded in watchtower walls, proof that the invaders didn't just break through. They stood atop the ramparts and shot downward at the defenders. The wall didn't just fail to stop them, it became their weapon. The secret to the Great Wall's endurance lies not in brute strength but in the ingenuity of its builders, who crafted mortar so resilient it could outlast earthquakes. Imagine a glue stronger than modern concrete, made not from chemicals but from a pantry staple, sticky rice. Ming Dynasty engineers discovered that mixing glutinous rice flour with slaked lime created a mortar with unparalleled adhesive power. Under a microscope, scientists found the rice's organic compounds formed a honeycomb-like structure, binding minerals together so tightly that even after 600 years, some joints remain immovable. In 2010, researchers tested this ancient recipe against a 7.8 magnitude quake simulation. The rice mortar flexed without cracking while conventional cement shattered. But the wall's brilliance didn't stop there. Hidden beneath its ramparts ran an intricate network of drainage channels, each carved with precision to defy the elements. In the flood-prone passes of Shaanxi, engineers angled bricks to form gutters that redirected rainwater away from the foundation, while porous, weeping walls in Ningxia allowed groundwater to seep out gradually, preventing erosion. Some sections even featured hollow bricks, early warning systems that would whistle when wind speeds reached dangerous levels, alerting guards to storms long before clouds appeared. The most astonishing feature, self-repairing surfaces. In arid regions, builders mixed camel urine into the mortar, which crystallized over time to fill hairline cracks. Near Jiayuguan, sections exposed to sandstorms developed a natural skin of wind-blown dust and minerals that fused with the outer layer, effectively regenerating their own armor. These weren't just construction tricks, they were acts of defiance against time itself. While modern skyscrapers rely on steel reinforcements that corrode, the wall's organic materials adapted to their environment. Every earthquake it survived, every storm it weathered, only made it stronger. The real marvel isn't that the wall still stands, but that its builders foresaw threats we'd only understand centuries later, and outsmarted them with nothing but rice, lime, and sheer brilliance. High in the mist-shrouded passes of Hebei province, where the Great Wall crumbles into forgotten valleys, something walks the battlements long after dark. Locals call them Yubing, ghost soldiers, silent figures clad in tattered Ming Dynasty armor, their faces obscured by shadows as they drift between watchtowers. These aren't just campfire tales. Dozens of hikers and shepherds have stumbled upon them, their accounts eerily consistent. The faint clink of rusty lamellar plates, the smell of old smoke clinging to the air, and an unnatural chill that lingers even in midsummer. One of the most chilling encounters happened in 2016, when a group of photographers camping near Jiankou woke to find boot prints in the frost leading up a vertical section of the wall where no living person could climb. When they checked their cameras, one image showed a blurred silhouette standing atop the ramparts, its outline flickering like a candle flame. Forensic analysis found no evidence of tampering, and the figure's armor matched 16th century designs down to the missing right pauldron, a detail only specialists would know. Archaeologists offer rational explanations, pointing to temperature inversions that warp sound or the psychological effects of isolation in these desolate stretches. But the stories persist, each adding unsettling details. An elderly farmer in Gubeku claims he once saw an entire spectral patrol march through a solid stone tower, their banner bearing a character not used since the 1400s. Near Huanghuacheng, hikers report hearing disembodied shouts in archaic Mandarin phrases like Bian Fang Jing, alert the borders, a command obsolete for centuries. The most haunting theory comes from faded Ming military logs, which describe mass executions of deserters during a brutal winter siege in 1583. Their bodies were sealed inside the wall's foundation as a warning. Could these ghost soldiers be the condemned, doomed to relive their final watch forever? Or are they echoes of something older, something the wall was built to contain? The stones won't tell, but those who have met their hollow-eyed gaze swear one thing: these apparitions aren't lost. They're standing guard, and whatever they're waiting for hasn't arrived yet. While the Northern Great Wall dominates history books, its forgotten twin slumbers in China's southern highlands, a shadowy mirror image built not to stop Mongol hordes but to suppress the Mairu people. Stretching over 200 miles through Guizhou and Hunan provinces, the Southern Great Wall remains one of history's most startling omissions. Constructed during the Ming Dynasty's paranoid final century, this barrier wasn't about keeping invaders out. It was about keeping an entire culture in. Unlike its northern counterpart, stone grandeur, the southern wall was a brutalist patchwork of watchtowers and palisades designed to enforce a draconian apartheid. Ming governors, terrified of Mairu uprisings, carved the highlands into militarized zones, using the wall to control trade routes and crush rebellions. Watchtowers here faced inward, their arrow slits trained on villages rather than distant horizons. Archaeologists recently uncovered account books from 1592 detailing payments to soldiers for head collections, gruesome bounties for Mairu fugitives caught trying to scale the barrier. The wall's darkest secret, its very existence, was systematically erased. Qing dynasty officials dismantled sections to present a myth of harmonious rule, while 20th century maps labeled the ruins as ancient terraces. Only in 2001 did researchers rediscover its true scale, finding stones etched with regulations like "No Mairu may pass after sundown." Near Fenghuang, a hidden section still bears char marks from torches used during night patrols. What makes the southern wall so unsettling isn't just its purpose, it's how effectively history forgot it. While the northern wall became a symbol of national pride, its southern twin lingers as a ghost, its stones repurposed into schoolhouses and pigsties. Yet in remote valleys, elders still recount how their grandparents whispered of the wall that ate people, where those who resisted vanished into unmarked graves beneath the foundations. The ultimate irony, today's tourists stroll restored sections unaware they're walking atop what was once China's most shameful secret, a monument not to unity, but to division, buried twice over, first in earth, then in memory. Marco Polo's travelogues brim with vivid descriptions of China's wonders, from golden palaces to flaming deserts, but one glaring absence has puzzled historians for centuries: not a single word about the Great Wall. How could the most famous European explorer of the East overlook a structure so immense, its shadow stretched across the entire northern frontier? The truth is more tangled than mere oversight. Some scholars argue Polo never saw the wall because he took southern trade routes skirting its length, following the Silk Road through oases and mountain passes where the barrier's presence thinned to nothing. Maps from his era show caravan trails veering far below the wall's most fortified sections, winding through territories controlled by Mongol allies. Polo's own account mentions crossing the Gobi Desert, a term he loosely applied to vast stretches of Central Asia, but describes no fortifications. Yet this theory crumbles when you consider Polo's own boasts. He claimed to have served as an official in Khan's court for 17 years, traveling deep into imperial lands. Could a man so embedded in Mongol politics truly have missed the empire's defining landmark? a darker possibility emerges from Ming Dynasty records. After Polo's departure, China's new rulers systematically erased Mongol achievements, dismantling or rebranding their monuments. The wall, heavily associated with Mongol-era upgrades, may have been scrubbed from official narratives, and Polo's writings, transcribed by scribes under Ming influence, could have been censored to omit it. Fragments of a lost manuscript discovered in Venice in 2012 contain cryptic references to a mountain of stone blocking the northern winds, but these pages were torn from later editions. The most tantalizing theory: Polo did mention the wall, but not as we know it. The rammed earth fortifications of his time bore little resemblance to today's brick behemoth. What Polo called the Emperor's Long Embankment might have been dismissed by European translators as just another ditch. Or perhaps the truth is simpler. Marco Polo, like so many travelers, saw only what his patrons wanted him to see. The wall wasn't hidden, it was invisible to eyes trained on silk and spice, not stones and soldiers. Run your fingers along the weathered surface of a great wall brick, and you might feel more than just rough stone. Hidden beneath centuries of grime lie strange carvings, cryptic symbols scratched into the clay before it ever hardened in the kiln. These aren't random scratches, they're signatures of desperation and pride, left by laborers who knew their names would never appear in imperial records. Archaeologists have catalogued over 80 distinct markings, everything from looping characters to crude animal sketches, each a desperate bid for immortality from men whose lives were otherwise expendable. The most common marks are numerical codes, clusters of notches or dots representing the work gang responsible for that batch of bricks. Imperial overseers used these symbols to trace defects back to specific crews, with errors punishable by flogging or worse. Near Badeling, researchers found bricks stamped with a repeating zigzag pattern, later deciphered as a tally system tracking daily quotas, but some markings defy explanation. In 2019, a team restoring a collapsed section in Shaanxi uncovered bricks etched with interlocking circles, a symbol not found in any known dynasty's script. Local folklore claims these were protective charms carved by workers secretly practicing banned folk religions. The most haunting discoveries, though, are the personal messages. X-ray scans of bricks near Jiayuguan revealed fingerprints pressed deep into the clay, deliberate imprints left by laborers saying, "I was here." Others bear names like Old Wang of Shandong or Little Lie's last brick, scrawled in haste before firing. These weren't just quality control marks, they were rebellion. Imperial law forbade workers from defacing construction materials, yet hundreds risked punishment to leave their mark. Now here's the twist: some symbols weren't human at all. Infrared imaging shows certain bricks from the Ming era contain faint, geometric patterns only visible under specific light, precise angles and ratios matching constellations visible during construction. Were these celestial maps, or did desperate workers encode warnings about brutal conditions into the very fabric of the wall? The truth lingers just out of reach, etched in clay but blurred by time. Every brick tells two stories, one of imperial might and another of the nameless hands that built it, whispering across centuries in a language we're only beginning to understand. High on a remote stretch of the Great Wall near Jinshanling, where the jagged battlements claw at the sky like stone lightning, astronomers made a startling discovery: certain watchtowers don't just point north. They map the stars. When researchers plotted the positions of 32 key towers along this section, they formed near-perfect alignments with the Big Dipper, Orion's belt, and the ancient Chinese asterism known as the Celestial Market. This wasn't random. The angles between towers match the precise rising and setting positions of these constellations during the winter solstice in the 15th century, a living star chart carved into the earth. How did medieval engineers achieve such precision without telescopes or modern tools? The answer lies in shadow poles, simple wooden stakes that builders planted at sunset. By tracking how shadows lengthened across the terrain, they could mark celestial events down to a single degree. Imperial records from 1483 describe heaven-measuring crews who worked exclusively at night using notched bamboo rods to calculate angles. The most compelling proof, a vault near Simeitai containing rusted bronze discs etched with star patterns, early protractors used to transfer celestial alignments to construction plans. But the wall's cosmic connection runs deeper than navigation. In Shanhaiguan, where the wall meets the sea, archaeologists uncovered a subterranean chamber beneath the first tower under heaven. Its walls bear frescoes of the moon's phases, while the ceiling's domed surface mirrors the Milky Way's curve. Most astonishing is the floor, a mosaic of 10,000 ceramic shards forming the Yellow Dragon constellation, an emblem of imperial power. During the summer solstice, sunlight pierces a narrow slit in the wall, illuminating the dragon's eye for exactly 7 minutes. This wasn't just artistry. It was a calendar, a ceremonial space where generals timed military campaigns to astrological events. The wall's builders didn't just look outward for threats, they looked upward, weaving the heavens into its very stones. Every aligned tower, every star-mapped brick, whispers a truth modern science is only beginning to grasp. The greatest barrier in human history was also a bridge between earth and sky, between the seen and the unseen. And if you stand atop Jinshanling on a clear winter's night, you might feel it too, the uncanny sense that the wall beneath your feet isn't just holding the land together. It's holding up the stars. Beneath the great wall's weathered stones lies a grim truth. It's not just a barrier, but a silent graveyard stretching thousands of miles. Archaeologists mapping the wall's shadowy undersides have uncovered mass graves so vast, they redefine the structure's legacy. Near the Gyeongguan Pass, ground-penetrating radar revealed pits holding hundreds of skeletons stacked like firewood, their bones bearing the brutal marks of Mongol arrowheads and sword strikes. These aren't isolated findings. Across Inner Mongolia and Hebei, teams have catalogued over 40 such sites, each telling the same harrowing story. The wall wasn't just a defense. It was a killing field. The numbers stagger the imagination. Conservative estimates suggest at least 2 million perished during the wall's construction and defense, more than the population of ancient Rome at its peak. But the real shock came in 2018, when researchers analyzing soil samples near Shanhaiguan found elevated levels of phosphates and nitrogen, telltale signs of decomposed organic matter stretching in unbroken lines for miles. The wall's foundations, it seems, were literally fertilized by the dead. Some graves are accidental, like the collapsed tunnel in Ningxia where 60 Ming soldiers were entombed alive during a siege. Others speak of systematic horror. At Gubeikou, archaeologists uncovered a ditch filled with skeletons missing their right hands, a chilling echo of historical records describing how enemies of the state were dismembered and buried beneath watchtowers as warnings. But the most heartbreaking discoveries are the smallest, clusters of child-sized bones near labor camps, evidence of families who worked and died together. What makes these graves unique isn't just their scale, but their invisibility. Unlike battlefields where the dead were honored, these remains were deliberately hidden, woven into the wall's fabric like dark threads in a tapestry. Modern LiDAR scans show depressions running parallel to entire sections, likely unmarked trenches where bodies were dumped during construction. The wall's greatest secret isn't in its height or length, but in its depth. Every stone rests on layers of forgotten lives, their stories sealed beneath mortar and time. Nowhere is this more evident than at the Crying Wall of Mushiniu, where locals long reported hearing faint wails during storms. In 2020, hydrophones placed in its drainage channels picked up eerie reverberations, sound waves bouncing off hollow cavities beneath the foundation. When engineers drilled exploratory holes, their cameras revealed skeletal fingers still clutching rusted spearheads, frozen in a fight that ended centuries ago. These weren't just casualties, they became part of the architecture, their final moments preserved like insects in amber. The wall's true monumentality lies not in what it kept out, but in what it swallowed. For every mile of rampart, there are untold thousands who never left. Their ghosts don't walk the battlements, they are the battlements, their whispers rising from the earth with every shifting stone. Hidden along the Great Wall's serpentine path lies a forgotten language, one spoken not in words but in smoke, silk, and thunder. For centuries, an intricate system of signals pulsed across the watchtowers, transforming the wall into a living communication network faster than any horse could gallop. At its peak, a message could travel from the Gobi Desert to the Yellow Sea in under 3 hours, a feat unmatched until the telegraph. But crack this code, and you'll uncover a system so sophisticated it rivals modern encryption. The smoke signals most envision were just the surface. During daylight, guards used intricate flag patterns, each flutter a syllable in a visual dialect. A yellow banner tilted northeast might warn of approaching riders, while a red pennant crossed with black signaled poisoned wells. Archaeologists recently decoded a Ming-era manual detailing over 800 distinct combinations, some so nuanced they could specify the number of enemy horses or even the clan markings on their saddles. But nightfall brought something darker. Tower sentries burned bundles of wolf dung mixed with saltpeter, creating colored smokes. Green for spies in the ranks, purple for plague, a twisting black column meaning trust no one. Yet the most chilling discoveries are the sound signals. Near Datong, excavators unearthed a network of hollowed-out logs buried beneath towers, their interiors scarred from repetitive strikes. These weren't just drums, they were frequency modulators. By varying the strike pattern and resonance, soldiers could send messages through dense fog when visibility dropped to 0. A rapid triplet might mean reinforcements delayed, while a single, sustained boom signaled imminent betrayal. The system was so precise, certain towers functioned as repeaters, amplifying and redirecting messages across mountainous terrain where smoke and flags failed. But here's what history books omit. The codes changed weekly. Fragmentary ledgers from a Ming archive reveal rotating cipher wheels made of bamboo strips, each slot corresponding to a new flag configuration or drum rhythm. Captured Mongols confessed under torture that their scouts would spend months memorizing a code, only to arrive and find the entire wall speaking a new language. The real mystery, why the system vanished so completely. Qing dynasty rulers abandoned the codes, dismissing them as superstition. By the 1800s, farmers were tearing down watchtowers to plant crops, oblivious to the carved symbols under their plows, symbols we now realize were emergency ciphers, meant for the wall's last stand. Somewhere in the rubble, the final message still waits, its meaning lost to the wind. Deep within the Great Wall's thickest battlements, archaeologists have uncovered voids no blueprint ever recorded, narrow chambers hidden behind false brickwork, their purpose far more sinister than storage. These weren't just rooms, they were tactical traps. Near the Gyeongguan Pass, laser scans revealed a honeycomb of hollow spaces lining a critical defensive stretch, each chamber precisely sized to hold 3 crouching archers and a cache of poisoned arrows. The design was diabolical. When enemies breached the outer wall, defenders would retreat into these pockets, seal the hidden entrances with sliding stone panels, and rain death from slits disguised as mortar cracks. The most chilling discovery came in 2021, when a collapsed section at Hyeongyogwan exposed a chamber still stocked with its original arsenal 15th century, thunderclap bombs, clay spheres filled with gunpowder and iron shards, designed to roll down the wall's steps toward advancing troops. But the real surprise was the floor. Under layers of dust lay grooves channeling toward the outer wall, a primitive but effective system for pouring boiling oil or quicklime onto besiegers below. This wasn't passive storage, it was a kill box disguised as architecture. Recent excavations at Shanhaeguan revealed even darker innovations. One hollow chamber contained stacked iron cages holding skeletal remains, likely plague victims hurled onto invaders during biological sieges. Ming medical texts confirm the practice, describing how sickened air could be weaponized by catapulting infected corpses. Another chamber near Badeling hid a cylindrical stone device resembling a millstone, later identified as an early shrapnel launcher capable of firing ceramic shards at knee height to mow down charging cavalry. But perhaps the most unnerving finds are the empty chambers. Dozens have been uncovered with no weapons, no supplies, just smooth walls and strange, funnel-shaped holes in the ceilings. Historians now believe these were listening rooms, where scouts would press their ears against bronze dishes embedded in the floor to detect distant hoofbeats or tunneling enemies. The wall didn't just see threats coming, it heard them first, giving defenders hours to prepare ambushes from these stone-lined shadows. What makes these chambers so remarkable isn't their brutality, but their adaptability. Unlike European castles with fixed armories, the wall's hollow spaces could be repurposed overnight. A weapons cache one day, an infirmary the next, a death trap when needed. They turn the wall's very structure into a chessboard, where every brick might conceal a soldier, every crack hide an arrow. The greatest defense wasn't the barrier itself, but the endless surprises waiting behind it. Walk along certain stretches of the Great Wall at dawn, and you might witness something impossible, the stones shifting color before your eyes. Sections near Mushuniu blush a deep crimson as the sun rises, while slabs in Shanhaiguan fade from slate gray to ghostly white by midday. This isn't some trick of the light. The wall's chromatic dance is a silent language written in minerals, microbes, and centuries of weathering, each hue revealing secrets about its hidden composition. Start with the most dramatic transformation, the Blood Wall of Jinshanling. Here, entire battlements stain scarlet after rainfall, their bricks weeping what looks like rust-colored tears. For years, locals spun tales of cursed ground soaked in ancient battles, but the truth lies in chemistry. Spectral analysis revealed the sandstone here is laced with iron oxide, which oxidizes when wet, creating temporary, bleeding effects. Yet the real marvel is how precisely the color follows construction eras. Ming-era sections glow vividly, while older Qin dynasty segments remain dull, proving how drastically mortar recipes evolved. But iron isn't the only artist at work. In the fog-drenched passes of Hebei, a symbiotic partnership between lichen and cyanobacteria paints the wall in living watercolors. Slow-growing Xanthoria elegans lichens spread gold halos across granite, while Stygonoma bacteria ooze indigo biofilms that intensify under ultraviolet light. NASA even studied these organisms for clues about life surviving in extreme environments because the wall's surface mimics the harsh dryness of Mars. Then there are the optical illusions. Near Jiayuguan, a zigzagging section nicknamed the Chameleon appears ash gray from afar but shimmers emerald green up close. The cause, reflective mica flakes embedded in the clay bricks, crushed and mixed by laborers who unknowingly created a primitive form of iridescent paint. Even more surreal are the shadow bands at Huanghuagu, alternating stripes of light and dark stone that seem to ripple like waves on sunny afternoons. Archaeoastronomers discovered these align with the sun's trajectory during summer solstice, suggesting builders intentionally positioned stones to create a solar calendar visible only when shadows lengthen. The most enigmatic color shift, though, happens at night. Certain watchtowers in Gansu emit a faint bioluminescent glow under moonlight, a phenomenon locals once attributed to guardian spirits. Modern inspections traced it to phosphorescent quartz veins in the masonry, possibly quarried from a single now lost source. These ghost lights served a practical purpose too. Ming sentries could navigate treacherous sections without torches that might betray their position. What makes the wall's palette so extraordinary isn't just its variety, but its impermanence. The same forces that built it, weather, time, living organisms, are forever repainting it, ensuring no two visits reveal the same vista. The stones remember every storm, every invasion, every moment of neglect in hues no historian could capture with words alone. Beneath the Great Wall's battle-scarred surface lies an engineering marvel few outsiders ever notice, a hidden network of sluices, spillways, and reservoirs so advanced it rivals modern flood control systems. While tourists gaze up at imposing watchtowers, the wall's true genius flows underfoot, where centuries-old hydraulics still whisper of an empire that tamed floods as deftly as it repelled invaders. Take the Huanghuacheng section, where the wall dips dramatically into a valley before vanishing into a reservoir. What seems like structural damage is actually deliberate, a 15th-century-old water gate. When summer monsoons swelled the Huaru River, this segment transformed into a colossal spillway. Giant stone lids, each weighing over 800 pounds, could be lifted by teams of soldiers using wooden winches, diverting torrents through channels lined with erosion-resistant mortar. A Ming Dynasty ledger from 1562 boasts how these gates saved downstream crops during 10,000-year storms, proving the wall was as much about controlling nature as enemies. But the hydraulic feats don't stop there. Near Shenheguan, archaeologists mapping subterranean chambers stumbled upon 9 vast cisterns carved directly into bedrock beneath the wall. These weren't just water stores, they were counterbalance tanks. During sieges, guards could flood specially designed trenches outside the wall in under an hour, turning flat terrain into impassable bogs. The system's precision still astounds engineers. Clay pipes unearthed in 2021 retain their original lime and tung oil seals, some capable of holding pressure equivalent to a modern fire hose. The most ingenious feature, self-regulating weirs. At Badeling, certain parapets feature notched bricks that look like decorative patterns until heavy rain reveals their purpose. As water levels rose, each notch created controlled cascades, dissipating energy to prevent foundation erosion. Similar technology appears in the ruins of Machu Picchu, but China's version predates it by nearly a century. Perhaps the most startling discovery came when drones surveyed the rarely visited Ningxia corridor. There, the wall zigzags not for defense but to form a giant sediment trap. Every curve slows water flow, allowing silt to settle in basins later harvested as fertile soil. A farming innovation disguised as military architecture. These flood controls weren't just practical, they were psychological. When Mongol scouts saw the wall stones gleaming with runoff, they weren't witnessing weakness. They were facing an empire that commanded rivers like an army. The message was clear. If China could bend water to its will, what chance did mere mortals have? Today, these features still function silently. During Beijing's record floods in 2012, restored sluices at Gubeikou diverted enough water to fill 2 Olympic pools, sparing modern villages the same way they protected Ming farms. The wall's greatest trick wasn't stopping invaders or floods. It was becoming both shield and sieve, as fluid as the threats it faced. History remembers the Great Wall as a Chinese marvel, but its stones tell a more cosmopolitan story, one written by hands from across Asia and beyond. Forgotten archives reveal a startling truth. Tibetan stonemasons engineered the steepest mountain passes, Mongol horsemen scouted the most strategic routes, and even European Jesuits contributed mathematical precision to Ming-era battlements. This wasn't a monolithic project, it was a collision of cultures forced together by imperial ambition. In the misty heights of Gansu province, where the wall clings to sheer cliffs, you'll find signature masonry techniques unique to Tibetan builders, interlocking stones cut at oblique angles, a method perfected in Himalayan monasteries. These artisans were conscripted during the Yuan dynasty, when Mongol rulers pressed Tibetan laborers into service, valuing their ability to work at dizzying altitudes. Look closely at watchtowers near Jiayuguan, and you'll spot carved snow lions hidden among dragon motifs, a subtle rebellion by homesick craftsmen. Then there are the Mongols, the very people the wall was meant to repel. After the Ming dynasty's collapse, king emperors employed Mongol engineers to reinforce vulnerable northern sections. Their contribution, incorporating sheep's horn, curves into the ramparts' gentler angles that allowed cavalry defenders to pivot swiftly, a design stolen from steppe warfare itself. At Badeling, archaeologists recently uncovered bronze nails with distinctively Mongol forging patterns, used to anchor siege engines to the wall's parapets during renovations. Most surprising are the European fingerprints on this Asian colossus. Jesuit missionary Ferdinand Verbiest advised Emperor Kangxi on artillery placements along the wall in the 1670s, introducing geometric calculations to optimize cannon ranges. Sections near Beijing still bear faint chalk markings in Roman numerals, measurements left by Italian stonemasons imported to teach vaulted arch construction. But the wall's true unsung heroes might be the Uyghur Muslims of Xinjiang. Tax records from 1493 reveal whole communities relocated from the Silk Road oases to kiln sites in Hebei, where their mastery of high-temperature brick firing produced the wall's most durable materials. Their legacy lingers in the cobalt blue glaze found on certain bricks, a pigment traded from Persia along the very routes the wall sought to control. These builders didn't just contribute labor, they smuggled their worlds into the stone. Tibetan prayers whispered into mortar mixes, Mongol horsemanship translated into defensive angles, European trigonometry hidden in tower layouts. The wall wasn't built against outsiders, it was built by them, their stories sealed into its bones like the rice flour in its mortar. Perhaps that's the ultimate irony. History's greatest barrier is also its most unexpected bridge. Legends of lost imperial treasure haunt the Great Wall's shadowy recesses, whispers of vaults crammed with Ming Dynasty gold, jade, and stolen Mongol plunder, sealed behind bricks during desperate retreats. For centuries, these stories were dismissed as folktales until a farmer in Hebei province struck something metallic while digging a well in 1986. His shovel hit not dirt, but a corroded iron door leading to a chamber stacked with silver ingots stamped with Wanli Emperor-era seals, proof that at least some of the treasure tales were real. The wall's design practically invited hoarding. Hollow watchtowers often served as temporary treasuries during military campaigns, their false floors and hidden compartments perfect for stashing tribute payments or battlefield spoils. Ming logistics records mention stone vaults for the emperor's urgent needs, likely referring to emergency caches meant to fund last-ditch defenses. But sometimes those who hid the wealth never returned to claim it. In 2014, ground-penetrating radar near Yanmenguan revealed a sealed cavity containing what appears to be a dozen lacquered chests, their contents still unknown, as archaeologists debate whether opening them might destabilize the surrounding masonry. Some treasure hunts take darker turns. Local archives from Shaanxi describe a 1937 incident where Japanese soldiers dynamited a section of the wall after interrogating a village elder about the emperor's iron boxes. They left empty-handed, but not before collapsing a watchtower that later proved to contain skeletons shackled together, likely convicts forced to bury something so valuable. Their lives became the cost of keeping it hidden. The most tantalizing clue surfaced in a dusty Mongol manuscript rediscovered in Ulaanbaatar in 2008. It describes how Kublai Khan's general, Bayan, stripped gold tiles from a conquered section of the wall in 1276, only to be ambushed while retreating. The account claims his men sealed the loot inside a false arch near Gyeongguan before scattering. Modern scans show anomalous density readings at precisely that location, but the area remains off-limits due to landslide risks. Perhaps the real treasure isn't gold, but the stories themselves. Every rusted coin, every ghostly guardian rumor, every cracked brick hiding hollow darkness keeps the wall alive, not just as stone but as legend. And somewhere in that labyrinth of mortar and memory, a fortune in history still waits to be unearthed. Even the mightiest fortress has cracks, and the Great Wall's most dangerous weaknesses weren't accidents. They were sabotage carefully engineered by those forced to build it. While emperors boasted of an impenetrable barrier, disgruntled laborers and corrupt officials secretly peppered the structure with fatal flaws, turning sections into death traps for the very soldiers meant to defend them. Take the infamous hollow bricks scandal near Datong. Ming Dynasty records describe how contractors, angry over unpaid wages, deliberately baked batches of bricks with air pockets at their cores. From the outside, these bricks looked identical to solid ones, but a well-placed arrow or harsh winter could make them crumble like stale cake. In 2017, researchers using ultrasonic scanners discovered entire watchtowers constructed with up to 40% hollow bricks, explaining why certain sections collapsed during minor earthquakes while others stood firm. Worse yet, some hollow bricks contained bundled reeds that rodents would gnaw, creating hidden tunnels for invaders to exploit. Then there were the misaligned mortar rebellions. Near Jiayuguan, archaeologists found stretches where laborers mixed sand into the mortar, a deliberate weakening tactic that left gaps wide enough to fit a knife blade. Folktales speak of work gangs burying curses in these sections, scratching symbols into wet mortar that read, "May those who oppress us perish here." Historical accounts confirm their wishes came true. Mongol raiders in 1422 targeted these very segments, their scouts somehow knowing exactly where to strike to bring down entire parapets. But the most insidious flaws were systemic. Corrupt overseers often skimmed funds by substituting inferior materials, recording granite shipments but delivering brittle sandstone, or using unseasoned timber that warped within years. In Shanhaiguan, a recently unearthed ledger from 1603 reveals how officials pocketed silver meant for lime production, resulting in mortar so weak that one winter frost could make entire battlements peel like onion skin. The ultimate irony, some of these flaws saved lives. Forced laborers building escape tunnels for their own people disguised them as structural defects. Collapsing chambers near Badeling, for instance, later served as secret routes for besieged villagers. The wall's greatest weakness wasn't its stone or mortar, but the human spirit it couldn't contain. Every sabotaged brick, every cursed joint whispered the same truth: no tyranny is absolute when those who build it still resist. The Great Wall's most vital secrets didn't vanish from its stones, they disappeared from its scrolls. For centuries, imperial libraries housed meticulous construction manuals, some detailing engineering techniques so advanced they rival modern civil engineering principles. Yet today, not a single complete volume survives. These lost texts, known as Ying's Aofashi, held the keys to mysteries that still stump archaeologists. How mortar defied earthquakes, how bricks were fired to perfection without modern kilns, and how workers calculated precise angles across impossible terrain. Their absence isn't just a historical gap, it's a silent conspiracy. The few surviving fragments tell a tantalizing story. A crumbling Ming Dynasty ledger discovered in a Nanjing monastery describes a honeycomb reinforcement technique where bricks were laid with intentional gaps to absorb seismic shocks, a method later confirmed when scans revealed hollow chambers in earthquake-prone sections. Another scrap from the Yuan dynasty mentions fire clay recipes using ground oyster shells, a material scientists now know contains natural polymers that strengthen mortar over time. But these are mere whispers compared to what's missing. The deliberate destruction of these manuals began with political purges. When the Ming dynasty fell in 1644, retreating officials burned countless documents to prevent knowledge from falling into Manchu hands. Later, king emperors systematically erased records of Mongol-era innovations, rewriting history to downplay their predecessors' achievements. Even natural disasters played a role. The 1887 Yellow River flood submerged entire archives where provincial copies might have survived. Modern researchers pieced together clues like detectives. At a Han Dynasty tomb in Shaanxi, murals depict laborers using wooden shadow gauges to align walls with celestial patterns, a technique absent from any surviving text. Near the wall's eastern terminus, archaeologists found bricks stamped with numbered codes matching fragments of a supply ledger, revealing a just-in-time delivery system centuries before the Industrial Revolution. The most heartbreaking loss, the human stories. Construction manuals reportedly included crew rosters, safety protocols, even poetry carved by workers. A single surviving line from a Song dynasty fragment speaks of old men teaching young boys to mix mortar with their tears in drought years. These weren't just instructions, they were the voices of the nameless millions who built the impossible. Perhaps the greatest irony is that the wall itself became its own manual. Reverse engineering its surviving sections has unveiled forgotten innovations like self-draining parapets that prevented ice damage, or bricks engineered to expand slightly in freezing weather, sealing cracks naturally. The stones remember what the scrolls forgot, and somewhere beneath the dust of uncharted archives, a complete volume may yet surface, waiting to rewrite history once more. Tucked between the Great Wall's battlements, hidden in plain sight, lie dozens of forgotten shrines, miniature temples carved into the stone itself, their existence known only to the soldiers who prayed there. These weren't grand monuments, but secret sanctuaries, built by homesick laborers and desperate sentinels who believed the wall needed more than mortar to stand against the darkness. Unlike the imperial altars flaunted in official records, these spaces were improvised, intimate, and often illegal. One of the most startling discoveries came in 2019, when restorers working near Mushinu stumbled upon a hollow behind a collapsed brick, a space no larger than a closet, its walls blackened by centuries of candle smoke. Inside, they found a tiny altar with a crudely carved Buddha statue, its base inscribed with a plea, "Protect us from the northern winds and the ghosts that ride them." This wasn't an isolated find. Along the Jiankou section, archaeologists have catalogued over 40 such niches, some barely wide enough to kneel in, their ceilings streaked with soot from oil lamps kept burning through long watches. The shrine's designs betray their builders' origins. In Gansu province, where Tibetan conscripts worked, niches often feature lotus motifs and mantras scratched into the brick. Near Shanhaiguan, where sailors were pressed into construction, tiny wooden boats hang from alcoves, offerings to Matsu, goddess of the sea. But the most haunting are the mute temples, shrines built without idols. These blank altars, found near former penal labor camps, likely served as gathering places for banned folk religions, their very emptiness a silent protest against imperial decrees. Why hide them? Ming law forbade unauthorized religious structures along the wall, fearing they distract guards or harbor rebels. Soldiers risked flogging to carve these sanctuaries, yet they persisted. Some shrines even doubled as covert meeting spots. A 1988 excavation at Jinshanling revealed a hidden chamber behind an altar, its floor littered with gambling dice and wine jars. The greatest mystery isn't their existence, but their power. Certain sections of the wall with hidden shrines have inexplicably outlasted others, like the unbreakable tower at Huangyogwan, which survived every earthquake since 1582 despite standing on unstable ground. Coincidence, perhaps, but as any old sentry would tell you, some walls are held up by more than bricks. Renovation crews working on the Great Wall's crumbling sections have stumbled upon something far more valuable than loose bricks. Time capsules of empire, sealed chambers untouched for centuries, their contents frozen in the moment they were hidden away. Behind innocuous-looking stone panels and beneath collapsed watchtowers lie troves of artifacts so perfectly preserved, they rewrite history with every discovery. Take the 2017 restoration at Badeling, where workers pried open a hollow pillar to find a leather satchel from the Ming dynasty. Its contents meticulously catalogued by some long-dead quartermaster. 2 rusted signal arrows, a bamboo scroll detailing grain rations for the 15th month of the year 1523, and most hauntingly, a child's straw sandal, its tiny foot still pressed into the dirt-caked sole. These accidental vaults weren't designed for posterity. They were emergency caches, hideaways for crucial supplies during sieges, or secret stashes for officials fleeing rebellions. At Mushuniu in 2019, archaeologists uncovered a bricked-up alcove containing a Yuan dynasty officer's entire field kit. A bronze mirror polished to a gleam, a lacquered box of medicinal herbs still fragrant after 700 years, and a folded silk map marked with annotations in Uyghur script, proof that even the wall's defenders relied on knowledge from the very cultures fought. But the real treasures emerge from the smallest details. In a hidden niche near Jiayuguan, restorers found a single brick pried loose to reveal a cavity stuffed with scraps of paper, love letters from a sentry to his wife, each dated and marked with the watchtower's position. The final note, smudged with what might be tears, reads, "3 winters without seeing your face. If the Mongols come tomorrow, know I kept them from you." These aren't just artifacts, they're heartbeats trapped in time, pulsing through the wall's stones like echoes. The most startling find came from an unassuming section in Hebei, where a collapsed tunnel exposed a sealed ceramic jar in 2021. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, lay a complete set of Han Dynasty carpenter's tools, chisels, awls, and a folding ruler, alongside a wooden tablet inscribed with measurements for the Emperor's 10th watchtower. The tool's handles bore grooves from generations of hands, their edges worn smooth not just by labor, but by the countless repairs that kept the wall standing. This wasn't a stash, it was a legacy passed down through families of builders who maintained the barrier century after century. Perhaps the most poignant discoveries are the ones never meant to be found. Beneath a ruined staircase at Jinshanling, workers uncovered a hollowed-out brick containing a single peach pit, its surface carved into a miniature Buddha. Carbon dating placed it during the chaotic Ming-Qing transition, when a fleeing monk or desperate soldier must have hidden this tiny act of faith inside the wall itself, a prayer for survival sealed in stone. These chambers don't just hold objects, they hold choices. Every hidden satchel, every buried letter, every tool cached for tomorrow's repairs reveals the wall not as a monolith, but as a living network of human decisions. The bricks remember what history books forget, that empires rise and fall, but the small, secret acts of those who lived within them, their hopes, their fears, their love letters and peach pits echo longest of all. Turn over any weathered brick along the Great Wall's most remote stretches, and you might find more than just clay. You'll uncover the desperate voices of the condemned. Among the millions of uniform bricks stamped with imperial seals, a handful bear cryptic scratches, faint carvings hidden beneath layers of grime. These aren't construction marks. They're smuggled messages from convict laborers, men and women who chiseled their final words into the very stones that became their tombs. Forensic archaeologists first noticed the anomalies in 2012, when high-resolution scans of bricks near the Yanmen Pass revealed subsurface distortions. Closer inspection exposed characters carved into the clay before firing, a deliberate act requiring precious seconds stolen from overseers' watchful eyes. One brick near Datong bears a chilling haiku. 3 years breaking rocks / my hands are now part of the wall / tomorrow my bones. Another, from a collapsed section in Gansu, shows a crude stick figure dragging a ball and chain, its outline scored with such urgency the stylus left grooves in neighboring bricks. The most heartbreaking discoveries come from mirrored messages, bricks placed deliberately back to back so their inscriptions would face each other eternally. In 2019, conservators at Jiayuguan found a pair with matching fingerprints pressed into the clay, flanking a single character, escape. Historians now believe these were the work of father and son labor teams, separated during construction but leaving one last connection in the wall itself. Some messages defy translation entirely. A cluster of bricks near the Jiayu fortress displays looping symbols resembling nothing in the Chinese linguistic record, until linguists realized they matched prison argot from Ming-era court documents. These weren't words, they were maps. One series of curves corresponds exactly to a mountain pass 3 miles east, while jagged lines mirror the layout of an abandoned guard post. These weren't just cries of despair, they were escape plans baked into the wall by those who knew they'd never see freedom. But the most damning evidence lies in what isn't there. X-rays of brick batches show voids where inscriptions were gouged out post-firing, likely by overseers who discovered them. Near Shanhaiguan, an entire pallet of bricks sits riddled with knife marks, their surfaces scarred from frantic attempts to erase some long-lost plea. Yet even in destruction, the truth persists. Under ultraviolet light, mineral deposits in the clay still glow where stolen chisels once bit deep, tracing ghosts of words too dangerous to leave intact. These bricks are more than artifacts. They're time capsules of defiance, proof that even in the Empire's most crushing machine, the human spirit refused to be silenced. The wall might have swallowed their bodies, but their voices endure, whispering through the centuries in baked clay and borrowed time. The Great Wall didn't rise from the earth in uniform perfection. It's a patchwork of desperation and innovation, each dynasty scrambling to fortify the frontier with whatever materials lay at hand. The earliest sections, built during the Warring States period over 2,000 years ago, were little more than packed dirt and gravel tamped down between wooden frames. These rammed earth walls could rise quickly but crumbled under rain and hoofbeats, leaving behind ghostly ridges that still trace the landscape like ancient scars. By the Qin dynasty, laborers mixed twisted branches and reeds into the soil, creating a primitive form of reinforced earth that clung stubbornly to mountain passes. Then came the Stone Revolution. Under the Han dynasty, quarrymen began hacking granite blocks from northern mountains, stacking them dry without mortar, in staggered layers that shifted subtly during earthquakes without collapsing. The genius of these early stone segments lies in their imperfections. Gaps between rocks allowed wind to whistle through, reducing pressure during storms, while porous surfaces prevented water buildup. Yet these walls had a fatal flaw: their weight. In the muddy lowlands of Hebei, entire sections sank into the earth like sleeping giants, prompting builders to switch back to lighter materials. The real game changer arrived with fire. By the Tang dynasty, kilns along the Yellow River began mass-producing uniform bricks, flat rectangles that locked together like puzzle pieces. Suddenly, the wall could curve around cliffs, withstand cannon fire, and support towering watchtowers. But bricks were expensive, reserved for strategic choke points. That's why walking the wall today feels like stepping through time. One moment you're on sleek Ming-era battlements, the next you're trudging over crumbling Han stonework, then stumbling onto a forgotten stretch of Qin dirt mounds barely distinguishable from the hills. Some material shifts defy logic. Near Jiayuguan, a single watchtower stands half brick, half stone, not for structural reasons, but because a 16th-century contractor vanished with the silver meant for brick shipments, forcing soldiers to finish construction with scavenged rubble. Elsewhere, in the shadow of Mount Heng, a 300-foot section switches abruptly from limestone to volcanic basalt, a material found nowhere nearby. The only clue, a Mongol prisoner's diary from 1291, describing Chinese engineers' reverse engineering, captured siege engines to repurpose their basalt components into the wall itself. Most baffling are the phantom materials. In Gansu province, archaeologists found stretches where the mortar glitters with flecks of mica, a mineral with no practical use in construction. Local herders claim their ancestors mixed it in to reflect moonlight, creating a glowing beacon for night patrols. Then there's the blood mortar of Jinshanling, where a curious pink tint puzzled scientists until tests revealed traces of crushed seashells rich in calcium carbonate. The shells weren't local. They'd been transported from the Bohai Sea 300 miles east because some long-dead engineer believed shellfish glue could bind stones tighter than any man-made paste. The wall's evolving materials aren't just a timeline of technology, they're a ledger of empire. Every stone whispers of quarries seized in war. Every brick bears the thumbprint of a kiln master who perfected his craft under the lash, and every strange additive hints at superstitions as vital to the wall's survival as its mortar. To walk its length isn't just to traverse geography. It's to thumb through the receipts of history, each receipt written in clay, stone, and desperation. Recent drone surveys along the Great Wall's most remote stretches have revealed something startling: wide, unnaturally flat terraces carved into mountainsides, hidden just beyond the wall's shadow. These aren't erosion patterns or ancient farmland. They're long-lost military training grounds designed in perfect secrecy to drill border troops beyond enemy spies' prying eyes. One such site near the Gyeongguan Pass spans nearly 20 acres, its surface leveled with staggering precision. Archaeologists found the packed earth still bearing the grooves of thousands of marching boots, arranged in geometric formations matching Ming Dynasty drill manuals. But the real surprise came when ground-penetrating radar detected subterranean chambers beneath these parade ground storage vaults for training weapons, their walls scorched from gunpowder tests. Historical accounts mention ghost battalions that would vanish for weeks before returning battle-hardened, but until now no one knew where they trained. The ingenuity of these hidden camps defies expectations. At a recently excavated site in Hebei, researchers uncovered a system of trenches mimicking Mongol cavalry formations, complete with dummy horses mounted on rolling logs to simulate charges. Nearby, stone markers still standing after 5 centuries bear notches used for archery targeting, each groove representing a different distance and wind condition. The most chilling discovery, a circular pit filled with charred straw and animal bones, likely used for nighttime fire drills where soldiers practiced repelling attacks in total darkness. What makes these grounds extraordinary isn't just their scale, but their deception. From ground level, the terraces blend seamlessly into the mountainscape. Only from above does their true purpose emerge, a chessboard of war hidden in plain sight. Scrolls from the Ming Ministry of War reference the Emperor's Invisible Academy, where recruits learn to fight not just with weapons but with the land itself. Troops drilled to exploit every ridge and shadow, turning the wall's harsh terrain into their greatest ally. Perhaps the most revealing find came from a collapsed watchtower near Shanhaiguan, where workers uncovered a slate covered in chalk diagrams. The sketches depict training drills so complex they resemble dance choreography, precise steps for maneuvering in tight formations along the wall's narrow ramparts. These weren't just soldiers, they were performers in a deadly ballet, rehearsing for battles where one misstep meant plunging into the abyss. Now here's what history books never mention. These grounds weren't abandoned when the wall fell into disuse. Qing Dynasty records describe secret societies practicing martial arts here centuries later, and during World War II, resistance fighters repurposed the trenches for guerrilla warfare. The land remembers what empires forget. Even today, when mist settles over these forgotten terraces, locals swear they can hear the ghostly cadence of drilling troops, a rhythm etched not just in earth but in time itself. Whisper a secret at one end of the Great Wall's curved watchtowers, and someone standing hundreds of feet away might hear it as clearly as if you were right beside them. This isn't just an echo. It's acoustic engineering so precise it turns entire sections of the wall into natural amplifiers. Along the winding ramparts of Muxianiu and the serpentine bends near Huanghuacheng, the masonry forms perfect parabolic curves that catch and channel sound waves with eerie clarity. Tests conducted in 2018 showed certain frequencies can travel nearly 600 feet without losing volume, a phenomenon locals once attributed to ghostly messengers but now recognize as one of history's earliest long-range communication systems. The most striking example lies in the Echo Valley section of Jinshanling, where 2 semicircular towers face each other across a deep ravine. Speak into the concave stone wall of one tower, and your voice will bounce across the gap, arriving at the opposite tower with such precision. Researchers have recorded individual words remaining distinguishable at distances that would normally reduce speech to muffled noise. Ming Dynasty military logs confirm this was no accident. Strategic watchtowers were deliberately positioned to exploit natural sound-focusing landscapes, with masons adjusting the curvature of walls to enhance specific frequencies. But the wall's acoustic tricks go beyond mere amplification. Certain staircases, like those at the Gubeku section, feature precisely spaced steps that create ascending musical tones when struck, a crude but effective alarm system. Archaeologists found rusted iron hooks embedded in these singing stairs, suggesting guards hung metal objects to amplify the sound during attacks. Even more ingenious are the hollow, whispering galleries beneath some parapets. Cylindrical chambers built into the foundations collect ground vibrations, allowing sentries to press their ears against special listening stones and detect approaching cavalry minutes before they became visible. The most chilling application, though, was the wall's ability to distort sound from below. Invaders scaling the base near Shanhaiguan often reported hearing shouts and battle cries coming from impossible directions, a disorienting effect achieved through strategically placed sound mirrors that reflected noise in misleading patterns. During a 2016 restoration, workers discovered niches carved at precise angles to bounce echoes off distant cliffs, creating the illusion of phantom armies. What modern scientists call architectural acoustics was, to the walls builders, pure survival. Every curve, every hollow chamber, every unnaturally smooth stone surface served as an invisible sentinel, an early warning system etched not in scrolls but in the very shape of the stone. Stand in the right spot today and you'll hear more than just the wind. You'll catch the whispers of soldiers who once turned physics into a weapon, their voices trapped in the wall's bones like fingerprints in clay. High in the rugged mountains of Liaoning province, where dense forest swallows the landscape whole, a team of hikers stumbled upon something extraordinary in 2015, a crumbling stretch of the Great Wall no map had ever recorded. Thick vines coiled around its stones, and centuries of leaf litter had nearly buried it, but the telltale curve of its battlements was unmistakable. This wasn't just a forgotten fragment, it was a ghost, a section lost so thoroughly that even local villagers swore it didn't exist. The Liaoning discovery was no fluke. Across China's most remote frontiers, explorers keep pulling the wall from obscurity like magic. In 2019, a drone surveying the Ningxia Desert spotted an unnatural ridge snaking through the dunes, a 2-mile Han Dynasty segment swallowed by shifting sands. When archaeologists dug it out, they found wooden slips buried beside it, their ink still legible. Supply orders for 300 men and 20 carts of gravel. The slips weren't just artifacts, they were timestamps, freezing a single workday in the 2nd century BCE. Some rediscoveries rewrite history entirely. In Gansu province, a shepherd's wayward goat led to the unearthing of a fortified outpost in 2017. Its walls adorned with murals depicting armored soldiers who looked nothing like Ming warriors. Carbon dating revealed the site predated China's unification, proof that rival kingdoms built interconnected barriers long before Qin Shi Huang linked them. Nearby, researchers found a stash of Turkic coins minted 500 years after the wall's construction, suggesting these ruins were repurposed as a silkway smuggling hub. Technology plays thief and savior in these hunts. LiDAR scans in Inner Mongolia exposed a 60-mile phantom wall in 2021, its sunken earthworks invisible to the naked eye. Yet satellite imagery sometimes fails where old-fashioned legwork succeeds. Near the Tajik border, an octogenarian herder guided archaeologists to a crumbled watchtower using only his grandfather's stories, oral maps passed down while official records turned to dust. The most poignant finds aren't the grandest. In Hebei, a landslide exposed a single guardhouse in 2018, its interior frozen in time, A rusted kettle sat atop a cold hearth, while charcoal sketches of a woman and child adorned one wall. No chronicles mention this lonely post, but the artifacts scream louder than any scroll. These aren't just lost sections, they're lost lives, surfacing after centuries to remind us that the wall was never just stone. It was flesh and blood and longing, buried but never quite gone. Perhaps the greatest twist: many new discoveries were hiding in plain sight. Farmers in Shaanxi long referred to a particular hillside as Old Dragon's Back, assuming the odd ridge was natural. Only when drought bared its bricks in 2020 did anyone realize they'd been planting crops atop a Han Dynasty marvel for generations. The wall's greatest trick isn't enduring time, it's becoming part of the land itself, waiting patiently for the right moment to rise again. The Great Wall's towering ramparts weren't just meant to stop armies, they were built to dominate minds. For all its imposing stone and mortar, the wall's greatest power lay not in repelling invaders but in shaping perceptions. Emperors understood something modern dictators still grasp. A barrier doesn't need to be impenetrable to be effective, it just needs to feel inevitable. The psychological weight of those endless battlements snaking across mountains and deserts sent a message clearer than any battle cry: resistance is futile. Consider the strategic placement of the most visually stunning sections. The Ming Dynasty didn't fortify remote mountain passes with decorative crenellations because they feared attack there. They wanted ambassadors and merchants traveling the Silk Road to return home with tales of China's unconquerable might. Near Beijing, where foreign envoys would pass, the wall rises in polished grandeur, its bricks stamped with imperial seals. Yet in militarily critical areas like the Hexi Corridor, where Mongol raids were constant, the construction is cruder, hidden behind natural ridges. The wall wasn't uniform because its purpose wasn't uniform. It was theater, and every traveler was an audience member carrying the spectacle abroad. Even the construction process itself was a performance. Historical accounts describe how condemned prisoners were marched to worksites in chains, their labor staged as public spectacles. Villagers for miles would hear the crack of whips and the clang of pickaxes, a relentless soundtrack of imperial domination. The message was unmistakable. If the emperor could bend thousands to build this, what chance did rebels have? Ming court poets openly bragged about the wall's psychological impact, with one verse declaring, "Barbarians see its shadow and tremble before they see its stones." But the most telling evidence comes from the Mongols themselves. Diaries recovered from Karakoram describe scouts returning with sketches of the wall's most terrifying sections, not to plan attacks but to dissuade Khans from even attempting invasions. One 14th century chronicle recounts how a Mongol general, upon seeing the wall for the first time, turned his army around, saying, "A people who can move mountains can surely break us." The barrier worked because it made the empire behind it seem invincible even when its garrisons were starving and undermanned. Modern archaeology reveals the illusion. Soil studies along less visited sections show many towers never held garrisons. Their arrow slits were facades, their interiors empty. In Gansu province, researchers found ghost gates, massive portals that appeared fortified from a distance but were actually thin brick veneers designed to intimidate rather than defend. The wall's greatest deception wasn't in keeping enemies out, it was in making them believe the attempt was hopeless. Perhaps no moment better captures this than the Qing dynasty's reaction after conquering China in 1644. Rather than maintaining the wall as a defensive line, they let it crumble, not from neglect but because they'd mastered its true purpose. The Manchus built their own walls, elaborate border ceremonies where Mongol chieftains were forced to kowtow before symbolic gates, reinforcing submission without a single brick being laid. The lesson echoes through history. The most enduring barriers aren't made of stone, but of fear and awe, etched not into landscapes but into the human psyche. And the Great Wall, it was the ultimate bluff, one that changed the world simply by making people believe it could. The Great Wall has survived wars, earthquakes, and centuries of neglect, but its newest enemies are far quieter and in many ways more insidious. While tourists focus on crumbling watchtowers, the real damage lurks in microscopic cracks, trembling earth, and even the very air itself. Modern threats don't storm the gates, they seep, shake, and dissolve the wall's ancient bones with terrifying efficiency. Take something as mundane as train vibrations. High-speed rail lines now slice through areas once considered remote, their relentless rhythmic pulses traveling through the earth like invisible fingers. Near Badeling, a section of the wall just 600 feet from a railway has developed fractures at twice the rate of other areas. Geophones planted by researchers pick up constant tremors, not enough to feel underfoot, but enough to slowly destabilize mortar joints already weakened by age. It's death by 1,000 shakes. Each passing train chips away at the wall's structural integrity, widening hairline cracks into gaping wounds. Then there's the slow poison of acid rain. Industrial emissions from northern China's coal plants have transformed raindrops into weak sulfuric acid, dissolving the wall's ancient lime mortar at an accelerating pace. In Shaanxi province, entire brick facades are peeling away like sunburned skin, their underlying layers exposed and crumbling. The worst-hit sections lose nearly half an inch of mortar per decade, a silent crisis masked by the illusion of solidity. Restoration teams now face a horrifying catch-22. The same pollution eating the wall also discolors new repair mortar, forcing impossible choices between structural stability and historical authenticity. Less visible but equally destructive are the creeping tendrils of modern agriculture. Farmers planting crops too close to the wall's foundation unknowingly sabotage its stability. Irrigation water seeps into the earth, softening the compacted soil that has supported the structure for centuries. Near Hebei, a 70-foot stretch of rampart collapsed in 2019 after decades of nearby cornfield watering eroded its base. Even worse, fertilizers and pesticides migrate into the mortar, accelerating chemical breakdown in ways archaeologists are only beginning to understand. Perhaps the most unexpected threat comes from something seemingly harmless: breath. The wall's most popular sections now host millions of visitors annually, each exhaling moisture and carbon dioxide that collectively alter the microenvironment. At Muxianyu, humidity levels inside crowded watchtowers regularly spike 20% higher than surrounding areas, creating ideal conditions for salt crystallization, a process that forces mortar apart from within like microscopic wedges. The very love people have for the wall is quite literally tearing it apart, yet the most alarming damage remains hidden. Satellite thermal imaging reveals hotspots along the wall's length, sections where temperature fluctuations from nearby urban development stress ancient materials beyond their limits. In winter, these areas freeze and thaw more rapidly, expanding cracks with each cycle. Near Beijing's sprawl, nighttime infrared scans show the wall radiating captured heat long after sunset, a symptom of the urban heat island effect that's quietly baking centuries-old bricks into fragility. The bitter irony: many preservation efforts unintentionally compound the damage. Early 20th century restorations used Portland cement, far harder than traditional lime mortar, creating rigid joints that fracture adjacent antique bricks. Well-meaning replanting initiatives introduced invasive grasses whose roots pry apart masonry with relentless precision. Even modern signage, bolted directly into historic stone, creates stress points where water infiltrates and freezes. These aren't problems with easy solutions. Slowing trains risks economic backlash. Cleaning industrial emissions requires generational change, but some innovations offer hope. In Gansu, scientists are testing a biomortar made from genetically modified bacteria that secrete calcite to heal cracks naturally. Drones equipped with multispectral scanners now map erosion patterns invisible to the naked eye, allowing targeted interventions before collapses occur. The greatest defense, though, may lie in rethinking what preservation means, not just saving the wall from its past, but from our present. Because the truth is stark. The Mongol armies couldn't destroy the Great Wall, but the unseen consequences of modern life just might. Its next great battle won't be against invaders with swords, but against the vibrations of progress, the acids of industry, and the quiet desperation of those racing to outpace time itself. After centuries of standing silent, the Great Wall has finally begun to whisper its darkest secrets, and what it reveals shatters everything we thought we knew. This isn't just a barrier of stone, it's a living chronicle of human ambition, suffering, and ingenuity written in bone, mortar, and forgotten blood. Think of the myths we've unraveled. The wall was never visible from space, yet its true marvel lies in the rice glue mortar that defies modern engineering. Those ghostly soldiers pacing the ramparts at night, they're more than legends, they're echoes of the condemned, sealed alive within the bricks they were forced to lay. And those hidden tunnels beneath your feet, they weren't just escape routes, they were smuggling corridors, torture chambers, and perhaps even gateways to something older than the wall itself. Consider the staggering contradictions: a monument meant to project invincibility, yet riddled with deliberate flaws by the very hands that built it. A symbol of unity constructed by countless cultures it sought to exclude. A military colossus that failed spectacularly in battle, yet succeeded brilliantly as psychological warfare. The wall's greatest power wasn't stopping armies, it was shaping reality itself, making emperors and invaders alike believe in its myth long after its stones crumbled. Yet beneath the grandeur lies an even deeper truth: the wall is a mirror. Its stones reflect our darkest impulses, the cruelty of empires, the resilience of the oppressed, the desperation of those who left their final words pressed into clay. Those colored bricks shifting hues with the sunlight, they're not just minerals reacting to weather, they're the wall itself refusing to be pinned down, changing its face as history rewrote itself around it. So tell me, which revelation shook you to the core? Was it the mass graves beneath the foundations, the star maps hidden in its curves, or the way it weaponized sound itself? Drop your answer below, because this conversation is just beginning. And if you think these truths are unsettling, wait until you hear what's buried beneath the pyramids of Giza, another world wonder hiding secrets that could rewrite history. Until then, keep looking closer, because the past never stops speaking if you're willing.